The island of Capri looks peaceful today, with its blue waters and cliffs glowing under the Mediterranean sun. Tourists climb the steep roads, imagining emperors in marble halls surrounded by luxury. But 2,000 years ago, this same island hid one of the darkest secrets of the Roman world. Behind the white stone walls of his villa, Emperor Tiberius, ruler of Rome, indulged in acts so perverse, so disturbing, that even hardened Roman senators whispered in fear. What happened inside those walls was not politics, not strategy, but something far more sinister: rituals of lust, cruelty, and humiliation that shocked even an empire known for decadence. Tiberius was no ordinary man. Adopted by Augustus, the founder of Rome's empire, he was expected to carry on the glory of his dynasty, but instead he became known as Tiberius Caldius Mero, the Old Goat. He was whispered about in taverns and palaces alike. Senators shivered when his name was spoken, not just for his power but for his reputation. Tales of unspeakable acts leaked out from Capri. Children forced to participate in games no child should ever know, grotesque experiments in pleasure that pushed the human body to breaking, and a ruler who seemed to grow more twisted with each passing year. What makes Tiberius' story so chilling is not only what he did, but how he lived in the shadows of his empire. While Rome fought wars, built monuments, and debated laws, its emperor hid on an island fortress guarded by cliffs and soldiers, where his nightmares turned real. And yet these acts were not simply whispered gossip. They were recorded, preserved, and passed down through historians who dared to describe what most could not stomach. This is not just the story of an emperor. It is the story of how absolute power can rot the human soul, of how a man born into duty and discipline abandoned all restraint and surrendered to the darkest urges. Tonight we journey into the private world of Tiberius, Rome's nightmare emperor. And by the end you may ask yourself, was he a victim of Rome's corruption or the ultimate creator of its decay? Tiberius was born into privilege in 42 BC. The son of Livia Drusilla, he grew up in a Rome already torn apart by civil war. His childhood was marked by politics, alliances, and betrayals. He was adopted by Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, and this adoption gave him a path to supreme power. But it also tied him into a dynasty that demanded perfection, discipline, and loyalty. As a young general, Tiberius was brilliant. He marched with legions across Germany and the Balkans. Soldiers respected him as cold but capable, a man who rarely smiled but always won battles. For Rome, he was a pillar of order, but behind that discipline lay a man who hated the spotlight. Tiberius despised the games of politics, the endless ceremonies, and the false smiles of senators. He longed to escape, even while Augustus pushed him deeper into duty. His family life was equally bitter. He was forced to divorce the woman he loved, Vipsania, in order to marry Augustus's daughter Julia. The marriage was loveless, filled with betrayal and shame. His personal bitterness grew as he was humiliated by Augustus's favoritism for other heirs. For years, Tiberius lived in exile on Rhodes, far from Rome, brooding and growing colder. When Augustus finally died in 14 AD, Tiberius inherited the empire. At first, he ruled with caution. He strengthened the treasury, avoided unnecessary wars, and tried to continue Augustus's legacy. Yet he was never loved. Romans saw him as distant, cold, and even paranoid. The Senate resented his strictness. The people missed Augustus's charisma. The turning point came with betrayal. His trusted commander Sejanus plotted against him, building his own power in Rome while Tiberius isolated himself. When the conspiracy was exposed, Tiberius ordered mass executions. Families of senators were slaughtered, children strangled, allies betrayed. Blood flowed through Rome's streets. From that moment, Tiberius was no longer a ruler trying to preserve order. He was a man consumed by suspicion and cruelty, and so he withdrew. Leaving the capital in 26 AD, he retired to Capri, a rocky island fortress. There he built villas with hidden rooms, gardens with pools, and chambers designed for secrecy. He surrounded himself not with senators or generals, but with astrologers, flatterers, and youths brought for his pleasure. The emperor of Rome had abandoned the empire, and in doing so, abandoned all restraints of morality. Capri became a kingdom of shadows. Roman historians like Suetonius and Tacitus described the horrors whispered across the empire. They claimed Tiberius turned his villas into brothels of power, where children were forced into his twisted games. He trained them as minnows, swimming in his pools to satisfy him in ways too grotesque to describe. Senators dared not question him. To accuse the emperor was to sign one's death warrant. And yet rumors spread, stories told of paintings and statues brought to Capri, not of heroes or gods, but of obscene scenes meant to fuel his desires. Servants were forced to participate in humiliating rituals. Women, men, and even children were brought as tributes, their lives shattered for the emperor's pleasure. But it was not only lust. It was cruel. Tiberius was said to delight in watching others suffer. Those who disappointed him faced savage punishments. Some were tortured, others executed in grotesque displays. Prisoners were thrown from cliffs into the sea, their screams echoing against the rocks. Soldiers waited below with hooks to drag the bodies from the waves. The people of Rome began to see their emperor as a monster. While Capri shielded him, stories could not be contained forever. Senators spoke of his growing madness, his paranoia, his delight in destruction. It was said that he even experimented with poisons and strange concoctions, testing them on slaves. And yet, through all this, Tiberius still ruled. His decrees carried weight. His agents crushed dissent. Rome remained under his shadow, an empire expanding even as its emperor decayed within. The contradiction was chilling. The world's greatest power was in the hands of a man who had abandoned humanity itself. Imagine being a Roman child taken from your family, brought to Capri and told the emperor demanded your presence. Imagine being a senator's wife forced to travel to the island, knowing what awaited you. The fear was not just of death. It was of being consumed by the emperor's appetite, used, discarded, and silenced forever. Even those who never set foot on Capri felt his shadow. Rome became a city of whispers. Neighbors feared each other, afraid that a careless word might be reported to Tiberius's spies. Families were torn apart by paranoia. Children grew up hearing stories of the emperor's island, a place of both luxury and nightmare. The psychological terror was as powerful as the physical. Tiberius's actions poisoned trust across the empire. He taught Rome that absolute power could destroy not only lives but the very soul of a civilization. What was Rome's greatness worth if its leader was drowning in depravity? And perhaps the greatest tragedy was personal. Tiberius was not born a monster. He was once a respected general, a man of discipline, a leader with potential. But betrayal, exile, humiliation, and absolute power twisted him. He became proof that unchecked authority can rot even the strongest will. Tiberius died in 37 AD, hated and feared. When news of his death reached Rome, the people cheered. They demanded his body be thrown into the Tiber River, cursed and dishonored. Few emperors have ever inspired such loathing. His successor, Caligula, would take Rome into an even deeper abyss. But it was Tiberius who had shown how absolute power could devour a man's humanity. His story is more than history. It is a warning. Power without restraint leads to corruption. Isolation without accountability breeds madness. Rome's nightmare is not just about one emperor's depravity. It is about how a society allowed silence to shield a tyrant. And perhaps, as we look at the world today, we must ask, how many leaders hide their own secrets, protected by power while the people suffer in ignorance? Tiberius's Capri is gone, but the lesson remains eternal. So when we study Rome, we are not just exploring marble ruins and ancient battles. We are staring into the human soul, seeing what happens when darkness wins. And that is why the story of Tiberius still matters. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories from history's darkest corners.